on this Monday night, passing the torch. The Democrats rally behind Kamala Harris at their party's convention. Can she keep up the momentum as President Joe Biden begins his long goodbye?
We'll sleep when we're dead when this is done, but not now.
Auto theft rising in Canada, warnings of escalating violence as organized crime tightens its grip on the trade. Plus, a firefighter's family seeks accountability.
And they know things can still go wrong, but not in this way.
The safety concerns around the Nova Scotia training facility where he died.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin in the U.S., where a newly energized Democratic Party is poised to officially nominate Kamala Harris as its candidate for president. The Democratic convention gets underway in Chicago. Harris will have a host of high-profile supporters backing her now that she's replaced President Joe Biden at the top of the ticket. But there is frustration outside that convention, where hundreds of Palestinian protesters have gathered, angry about the way the Biden administration has handled the war in Gaza. Jackson Proskow is at Chicago's United Center tonight. Jackson, how much of a difference has Joe Biden's decision to step aside made to the mood of the Democrats?
Donna, it's incredible. They are enthusiastic and they are excited. And the really remarkable thing here is that Joe Biden has gone from featured speaker to warm-up act for his successor.
This is not the convention Democrats expected. Yet less than a month after President Joe Biden dropped out of the race, the party is ready to rally around its new nominee with genuine enthusiasm.
I very much consider us the underdog. We have a lot of work to do to earn the vote of the American people.
Officially, Kamala Harris secured the nomination in a virtual roll call 2 weeks ago. The next 4 days are largely symbolic as the party rallies its most famous faces to help her build momentum. The Obamas and the Clintons will speak in prime time after a handoff from the Bidens on night one.
This is supposed to be his convention, but in some ways this helps him get to set the agenda and tee it off in a way that can help Kamala Harris.
In just a few short weeks, Harris has turned around Biden's faltering poll numbers and made it a real fight against Donald Trump.
Hundreds of other war criminals are here in Chicago to celebrate themselves.
But she can't escape the protest movement that has dogged the president.
Palestine will be free!
Over his support for Israel and the massive civilian death toll in Gaza.
If you want our vote, you need to earn it. We're not just going to get on board with you just because there's another person after Joe Biden.
Tens of thousands of protesters plan to march near the convention site daily. And a movement of uncommitted voters could still deny Harris support in key battleground states.
So if we don't stand up for what we know is right, we won't make the Democratic Party any better.
But Democrats are pressing on undeterred, preparing to celebrate a new chapter for the party with a candidate who has given new life to their chances.
And Donna, if you want a sense of how much enthusiasm there is surrounding Harris, tomorrow she's headed to Milwaukee, to the same arena where Donald Trump accepted his party's nomination just over a month ago. She is holding a simultaneous rally in that venue, hoping to fill that arena for a virtual watch party of the convention back here in Chicago.
Jackson, thanks. In its latest update on conditions in Gaza, the UN says repeated waves of displacement combined with overcrowding, insecurity, crumbling infrastructure, active hostilities and limited services means the humanitarian situation, already catastrophic, is worsening. Another Israeli evacuation order on Saturday means more than 13,000 Palestinians, including an entire refugee camp, have had to move yet again. America's top diplomat, who is in the region, today claimed to have made some progress on ceasefire talks.
In a very constructive meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu today, he confirmed to me that Israel accepts the bridging proposal.
What that means, though, is unclear. The Israeli prime minister has repeatedly said the attacks on Gaza will not stop until total victory is achieved over Hamas. Hamas's military wing and Islamic Jihad are claiming responsibility for what they say was a suicide bombing in Tel Aviv late Sunday. One passerby was injured. Hamas is threatening further attacks inside Israel because of the displacement and killing of Palestinians in Gaza. Canada's two main rail companies are both on the verge of labour stoppages that could cause huge damage to the economy. The union representing thousands of rail workers at Canadian Pacific Kansas City has issued a 72-hour strike notice. Canadian National Rail has told the same union it will start locking out workers on Thursday. Talks that have been going on for months have now reached a breaking point. Mackenzie Gray explains what's at stake.
Canadian railways are on track to grind to a halt.
Our members like their jobs. They like operating trains. They just want to be able to enjoy safe and decent working conditions.
Despite bargaining all weekend, disputes over rest rules, safety concerns, and a forced relocation plan pitched by CN haven't moved the needle for the over 9,000 Teamster union members.
Both CN and CPKC seem to almost be colluding together to try to maximize their leverage against the union.
Canada's two largest railways can lock workers out Thursday. CP employees could also go on strike on the same day. But however a potential labor dispute kicks off, it would freeze over $1 billion a day in goods.
This is a critical time for grain farmers to get their grain to market,
including numerous agricultural products at the start of the harvest season.
One of the immediate things grain farmers are going to have to do is find storage capacity to keep their grain, make sure that it doesn't spoil.
The scramble for farmers and other businesses is on, with CP banning new shipments starting Tuesday morning, CN barring new containers come Wednesday. But it's not just goods. Passenger rail could also be severely limited. The GO train in southwestern Ontario, commuter trains in Vancouver and Montreal, plus Via Rail could all be shut down.
We hope that the Minister of Labour will not just wait on the sideline.
A sentiment supported by the railroads and other business groups, but Labour Minister Steve McKinnon has given no sign the government will intervene, rejecting proposals for binding arbitration.
A month into this, you're going to have to start thinking about what you're going to do.
Former Labour Minister Lisa Raitt believes it's too early for the government to act, saying despite the public posturing, an agreement could be close.
I think that if there is some kind of a deal to be had, that they will get to a deal, and they're going to try to make sure that we don't have such an impact on the Canadian public.
An impact that won't just be felt on goods within Canada, but also on imports, Donna, with shipping titan Maersk announcing they're no longer accepting goods destined for Canada that need to be moved by rail.
All right, Mackenzie, thanks. Ontario's premier has shifted his thinking about renewable energy. Doug Ford is now embracing it after scrapping more than 750 projects when he was first elected in 2018. Ford's progressive conservative government now says it will oversee the biggest expansion of green energy in Ontario in nearly a decade. It plans to procure an additional 5,000 megawatts of renewable energy by 2034 to meet rising demand for electricity. The province says it will welcome proposals for new wind and solar projects starting later this year. In Italy, a search is underway for 6 people missing after a super yacht capsized during what's described as a freak storm off Sicily. The Italian Coast Guard says Canadian, American and British nationals were among the 22 on board, including British tech entrepreneur Mike Lynch. It happened early this morning off the coast of Sicily. A sudden powerful storm created water spouts, and one of them hit the yacht, snapping the mast in half. One body believed to be the cook has been recovered. 15 people were also rescued, including a 1-year-old child. They were initially picked up by a nearby boat.
We saw a red flare. Yeah. So my first mate and I went to the position, and we found this life raft. Yeah. Drifting. But anything inside? With 15 people inside. 15 people. 15 people inside. 4 people injured, 3 heavy injured, and we brought them to our ship.
Divers are now trying to reach the hull of that ship as they search for the 6 people still missing. Russian forces continue to attack inside Ukraine, but the momentum has shifted. The biggest gains in recent days have been made by Ukrainian troops inside Russia. Ukraine has captured more territory there in 2 weeks than Russia has in Ukraine all year. And as Jeff Semple reports, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is now revealing what he hopes to achieve.
This is the tip of Ukraine's spear. Ukrainian special forces pushing deeper into Russia. Kyiv says it now controls nearly 1,000 square kilometers, taking prisoners and destroying critical infrastructure. Over the weekend, Ukraine blew up the third and last key bridge in Russia's Kursk region, encircling and cutting off a strip of Russian territory about the size of Ottawa from escape or reinforcements.
The Ukrainians are digging in. They have field hospitals. They have all the surrounding apparatus that would indicate they're there for the long haul.
Ukraine's president said the incursion, now entering its second week, aims to create a buffer zone to prevent Russia from launching cross-border attacks. Volodymyr Zelenskyy also suggested the territory could provide leverage in future ceasefire talks. But the Russian president doesn't appear interested in negotiating. His country under attack, Vladimir Putin visited neighboring Azerbaijan to discuss energy cooperation. Just last June, Putin had warned that any attack on Russian territory risked nuclear war.
What the Ukrainians have brilliantly done with this incursion is shown the world that these Russian red lines were really just a bluff. The Russian reaction thus far has been quite subdued.
The incursion has forced Moscow to divert some troops home from Ukraine, but Russia's offensive continues, now advancing on the East Ukrainian region of Pokrovsk.
And it seems like the Russians don't really care about their own territory as much as conquering Ukrainian territory.
The Ukrainian advance is now slowing, and it's unclear whether Kyiv can hold its newly captured territory. But analysts say this incursion is about more than land.
This has changed the narrative to a degree. The Ukrainians have made it very clear that Vladimir Putin is also vulnerable.
After 2.5 years, as Western allies were growing weary, Ukraine's offensive has given its supporters and its people new reason to hope. Jeff Semple, Global News, Toronto.
A state of emergency has been declared in the state of Connecticut after catastrophic and deadly flooding over the weekend. Torrential rain in the state's south triggered mudslides and destroyed roads and bridges. More than 100 people were forced to find higher ground, and dozens of them had to be rescued. State police say 2 women died. They were swept away from their vehicles in 2 separate locations as firefighters tried to save them. Strong swells pounded the U.S. East Coast as Hurricane Ernesto picked up strength in the Atlantic. It is expected to weaken to a post-tropical storm by Tuesday as it sweeps into Atlantic Canada. Ernesto is tracking offshore right now, but that storm is still expected to cause dangerous swells and rip currents. Coming up, Canada's auto theft crisis, the dangerous ways organized crime is cashing in. Increasingly violent carjackings are taking place in Canada as organized crime gains a stronger foothold in the lucrative trade of stolen vehicles. That's according to an auto theft report from an RCMP-led National Criminal Intelligence Agency. Our chief investigative correspondent, Carolyn Jarvis, has been reviewing it. Carolyn.
Donna, the headline: organized crime groups are increasingly moving into the auto theft space. This intelligence assessment counts 78 groups, most of them in Ontario and Quebec, and says they're taking on more risks, including the use of violence. It was only 2 weeks ago this car owner was pumping gas in Newmarket, north of Toronto, when a carjacker slid into the driver's seat to take off. Another driver tried to block his exit, but he reverses, nearly ripping off the door, and flees. It's scenes like these, which have played out too many times, that a report by the Criminal Intelligence Service Canada says will likely become more common, and it warns the level of violence and the use of weapons will increase. Like we see here. When York Regional Police use a flashbang to take down suspected car thieves in a stolen Acura, the suspects run, and one tosses a loaded handgun.
We're seeing that already. The violence has increased. We've seen an increase in carjackings, an increase in home invasions, and an increase in break-and-enters to steal vehicles, steal keys.
The report lays bare the inner workings of organized auto theft and the money in play. It starts with a spotter who trolls parking lots and driveways, sometimes planting GPS trackers on desired vehicles. Next, a thief, commonly a young person and a lower-level criminal, steals the vehicle, earning $500 to $1,500 each time. A driver then transports it. In the East, that's most often to the Port of Montreal. At the upper level of the crime groups, a facilitator works as a middleman, connecting with an exporter and ultimately the buyer. And that's where the big money is made. Buyers and exporters are pulling in $50,000 profit per container, often holding 2 cars, according to this intelligence briefing.
The profit margin is massive. We've heard of areas where they're almost getting double the value of a Canadian car.
While recent data shows auto thefts in Canada have decreased 17% in the first half of this year, the report cautions the criminal drive for profit will continue to drive more thefts.
We can't take the foot off the pedal.
With the risks as high as ever. Carolyn Jarvis, Global News, Toronto.
Some spectacular Viking-era treasures have been discovered in Denmark. These silver arm rings are believed to date from the 800s. They were unearthed by an archaeology student who used a metal detector to scour an historic Viking settlement. At their height, Viking trading networks stretched from modern-day Greenland and the fringes of North America to Turkey and Central Asia. These arm rings are now on display at a Danish museum. Keeping firefighters safe ahead, the push to reform training in Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia's firefighters' training facility has been shut down over persistent concerns about safety. And the family of a firefighter who died at that school is speaking out 5 years after Skylar Blackie was killed by a faulty fire extinguisher. As Heidi Petracek reports, his family says they are not going to back down until the province overhauls the entire system.
I would hope that in the industry would have taken it upon themselves to correct their errors.
But Skylar Blackie's family says that didn't happen. It's been 5 years since the 28-year-old went to the Nova Scotia Firefighter School, a training ground for both new and career firefighters. He went for some extra professional certification and was killed when the fire extinguisher he was using exploded, causing traumatic brain injury.
These pieces of equipment, these fire extinguishers, were donated and nobody took the time to check them.
The school was charged in 2020 with occupational health and safety violations in connection with Skylar's death. It pled guilty and was ordered to pay more than $100,000 in fines. It kept on operating, even after a recent third-party audit flagged 22 high-risk safety violations, prompting his family to speak out. The province then shut the school down until further notice Friday. In posts online, the head of the school has maintained improvements are happening, but he wouldn't do an interview, and reception turned us down at the front door. The school is the only place in Nova Scotia where firefighters can be professionally certified for certain skills, and it's also the only facility with live fire training equipment on site. Nova Scotia's Firefighters Union says it's been pushing Halifax's fire department to stop using the institution ever since Skylar's death.
We've absolutely advocated to cease using the fire school in any capacity. We just haven't been successful.
The Blackie family wants the school overhauled and legislation for training put in place in Nova Scotia like it is in other provinces before anyone else takes instruction here, including Skylar's brother, who's also a career firefighter.
All firefighters, this is the one place, and they know things can still go wrong, but not in this way.
He would have been the first person to step up to the plate and make sure that all his brothers and sisters were safe.
This fight, they say, what Skylar would have done himself. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Windsor Junction, Nova Scotia.
And that is Global National for this Monday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight, if the sky is clear where you are, you have a chance to see something special, a super blue moon. A super moon occurs when the moon is full during the closest point in its orbit around the Earth, appearing bigger and brighter than a regular full moon. And since this is also the second full moon of the month, it's described as a blue moon. Once in a blue moon. There you have it. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.